Hey everybody, it's been a while since I've done a review, and since I just got these new, not cavern, but ruined fantasy kind of dungeon tile. They're called Stone Ruins from printablescenery.com. Why don't I get the name right at least? And the idea is that you can buy the files to print these out yourself, so that you can make as many of these stone ruins as you like. And since I now have a 3D printer, I thought that would be kind of a fun thing to get. And these are really geared towards role players, and you can kind of see where each of the main sections is like a 25mm square, which works out really well for like D&D and stuff. And each of these segments is 50 by 50, like every one works out to that. And I guess the idea here is that, you know, you can print out all of the ones they give you, and they claim to give you 104, I think. Let me double check that. 104 pieces. But really it's about half that. And the reason that is that in the files, let's take this one as an example. This exact piece exists twice. Once in this form with the sort of little chunk taken out of the base, and once in another form where the base would be completely intact. Otherwise, completely identical. Which to me seems like a way to kind of pad the number of tiles that you get. And because how long would it take you with a Dremel tool to just go and hog out a little segment there? Plus, you know, each one that you did would be different. It's a minor gripe, but I think it's fair to comment on that. Some other things I noticed. Well, let's talk about the tiles themselves, and then I'll go back to my other gripe. The overall look of them is fine. They seem to be a little, like the stones seem to be a little loosely packed, and my guess is that they did that so that were you to scale this down, let's say this is for 25mm scale minis, or 28mm, however you want to say, whatever the standard role-playing size mini is. If you wanted to scale it down, for example, for 15mm, when you scaled this down, it would still look pretty good because it's so loose at this size that it's only going to tighten up a little bit at 15. If you made this look correct, in my mind, at 28mm and then try to scale it down to 15, you might lose a lot of the resolution of the individual blocks. So, like for example, this one actually has a little bit more sort of a realistic spacing to the blocks, and I imagine that were you to scale this one down, it's going to get a lot flatter. You're not going to see as much as the detail. But otherwise, like, these were printed out at, let me see. Well, I think these are all printed at the suggested resolution. And that is 0.2 microns. And they suggest 10% infill. I just leave it at my standard 20%. It doesn't make a lot of difference in terms of how much plastic you're using, between 10 and 20%. And it's going to look fine. Like this has a coat of primer on it. Already with just a coat of primer, looks pretty good. Like, you don't really see much of the print lines. I've noticed that with anything that is sort of constructed but not smooth, usually don't worry too much about the print lines. They tend to look fine. But now back to my complaints. I had a couple of things, and actually this one is one of them. So there are, like I said earlier, 2 versions of every piece, almost. There's a few stray things, like they have some little stacks of just broken stone. There's only one of each of those. They don't actually come on a base. They're really meant to be more like scattered terrain. That's fine. But this piece in particular, there's 2 or 3 similar pieces to this. And they're identical. So there's essentially 2 folders. There's the broken, the broken floor folder and the non-broken floor folder. Well, this piece is identical in either one, and in fact there's several pieces like this with this arch that are identical in both ones. So I don't know if they never got around to making a broken base version, but it just shows a little sort of lack of attention to detail. And in fact, if you go to their site and you look, there's a couple of images, and I'll show them here, where they kind of just break down each of the pieces, both in the complete bases and the broken bases set. You can see that they're identical, but of course I just showed you that they're identical. There's one more weirdness to this, and that is there's a handful of these pieces, and they only exist, surprisingly, these only exist in the broken base folder, but the bases are intact. But as you can see, they don't match the pattern for the flagstones, and or on the wall blocks, and you'll note they seem kind of short, and these are just weird. These actually seem like these are scaled for 15 millimeter, whereas everything else appears to be scaled for 28 millimeter. So I'm not sure. Am I supposed to? You could just scale this up to make it work with 25 millimeter. But the problem is then they wouldn't really work, like the base would become too thick, or certainly thicker, and it would stand out next to the other ones. I suppose if you just wanted to use these on their own as their own thing, then that would be okay. That would work out fine. But it's just weird. It's weird because, like I said, these only exist in one of the folders, so it's not like they duplicated these. So it almost seemed like an afterthought. They were like, well, we have these, let's just throw them in there to pad the numbers. Yeah, so that's some weirdness. So what do I think? Well, this set retails at 30 bucks. And, you know, supposedly you get 104. I'm going to go with you get maybe 60 different things, because I don't really count taking a chunk out of each of the files as really providing you with an entirely different thing. So let's just say 60. Let's say you get 60. And even then, like, there'll be, you know, 3 variations of something that looks almost like this, but maybe there's a little bit more here. And, you know, another one that looks like this, but instead of this being complete, there's a part broken out here. So even the variations are subtle, and it's nice that they exist, but they're like variations that you could make on your own with very little work. So with that in mind, you get maybe 30? I'm going to be generous and say you really kind of get 30 different things. And so that means that the files, in my mind, work out to about $1 a piece. Actually, that doesn't seem so bad when you look at it that way. They're nice. You know, they will work out. I'd be able to make some interesting terrain pieces with these. They would work really well with Frostgrave, for example, if you wanted to do some ruined stonework for your Frostgrave game. They recommend using them with their intact stonework pieces, and I could see how that would be nice, because then you'd have, you could have some things that are intact and some things that are broken down, or some that are some combination of the two, and that would be great. So even problems aside, I don't think it's too bad a price. I do wish it was a little bit better, and I wish they had a little bit more attention to detail, and I wish you knew what the hell was going on with these pieces. But otherwise, definitely worth a look. There's not too many other people offering things like this at the moment. And the nice thing is you can just sort of print off as many as you need them. And, if you go there looking for these, they have a lot of other stuff there, and I'm actually planning to buy some more. So the fact that I have these problems and I'm still okay with it, well, I guess that means that I like the product in general. I just wish that there was a little bit more attention to the detail, maybe some instructions, maybe like explaining what the hell this is. And maybe replacing those files that, I don't even care, because again, if all it was is a different version of this with a chunk cut out, well, I can do that. But, take one of them out and say there's actually 103 or 102 or 101 or 100 or what the actual number is. I seem really unhappy. I'm not that unhappy. I guess on a scale of 1 to 5, and I don't do scales, but I'd say it's a 3. Reasonably happy with it. Not overly excited. It gets the job done, and you might want to look at it. And that's going to do it. This is actually just a really quick review. And that's going to do it for now, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.